Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of the Times of India, I, Deepal Gala, Senior Features Editor, welcome you to this very important session on issues around urinary incontinence. No More Leaks, Break the Silence is a campaign by the Times of India supported by MSN Labs to bring awareness and break the silence around this important function of the human body. More than 50 million people suffer from incontinence in India. And women are likely to suffer twice as much as men. 1 in 10 senior citizens have an incontinence issue, as per research. Despite being so common, social stigmas around the issue have led to severe lifestyle problems for people. And hence, it is very important for us to hear from the people in the know, the urologists, about all the details about this issue so that we can help ourselves and our dear ones. So I would like to introduce the eminent panel we have today. We have Dr. D.V.S. Ramakrishna Prasad, consultant neurologist, Asian Institute of Nephro and Urology Hospital. Dr. A. Ravi Kumar, consultant urologist, Medicover Hospital, High-Tech City. Dr. N.P. Padmakar, consultant urologist, Apollo Hospital, Secunderabad. Dr. K. Lalita, consultant urologist, Dr. Lalita's Urogynecology Center in Hyderabad. Dr. B. Lakshman, consultant urologist, Hyderabad Urology and Andrology Hospital. So a very good afternoon to all of you. Let us all start by understanding what is urinary incontinence. Is it a natural symptom of aging or is it a disease? So Dr. D.V.S. Krishna Prasad, please help us understand this.
Yeah, urinary incontinence means involuntary loss of urine. Actually, as the age advances, both the male and female, they experience some episodes of incontinence which increases with the age. It is the strongest non-modifying factor we all should understand.
Okay, so but sir, is it so it is related to aging, and you don't see it as a disease, do you? As a urologist, do you see it as
it is also it related to disease also, but as age advances, the incidence, the incontinence also increases. Both the stress incontinence, urge incontinence, the incidence also increases.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Ravi Kumar, who is most likely to be impacted by issues of incontinence? Are there red flags which people can watch out for early in the trajectory so that they can help themselves?
See, even though incontinence increases with age, there is a misconception in the Indian population that because of age it is occurring. And this scenario, it leads to them not coming to the doctors for treatment.
Yes.
Actually, it is a very debilitating condition, and patients with incontinence should be coming to the doctors, especially to urologists, and get themselves treated. What are the conditions which can cause this? One is obesity. The other one is diabetes, and any neurological conditions that the patient is having, like Parkinsonism, multiple sclerosis, or any other stroke that the patient, what we call cerebrovascular accidents, paralysis kind of a thing. All these things can lead to both urgency, urge incontinence, and stress incontinence. And in females, as you have said, the chances of incontinence are double that of men. The main causes, what they say, is the short length of the urethra, the hypermobility of the urethra that they get because of repeated deliveries, and vaginal prolapse that is common in females. That is the reason why females get more of the incontinence problems. But many of these problems have got treatments, and patients should not feel that this is an aging process and they should not confine themselves to their homes and leaving all their social life behind. They have to come out, speak, and get treated.
Absolutely, absolutely, doctor. I think that is the whole purpose of this webinar. And in the following hour, all of us, we will hear from you, all of you. What are the things that we can do, to handle this? So, Dr. Padmakar, how do doctors usually diagnose urinary incontinence?
When Dr. Ramakrishna was talking about the definition, I would like to add one more.
Sure.
Demonstrable. Demonstrable. I mean, the involuntary loss of urine has to be demonstrable, whether it could be in the children, middle age, young age, or older ages. Okay, that's okay. Diagnosis is very simple. The patient comes to us with very distressing symptom. History is more important here. We don't need many gadgets to diagnose. We have a very simple: talk to the patient, provide privacy to the patient, talk to them, whether a male or a female. If the female is there, the female attendant has to be there with the doctor or a nurse who can really get into the her urinary complaints properly. So history, what I mean history mean how's the urine the patient is passing, whether there is involuntary loss on coughing, or there is an urge incontinence where the patient has an urge to pass urine when by the time patient reaches the toilet there is leak of urine, or the patient is continuously dribbling. If the patient is continuously dribbling, it's easy. When we examine the patient, examination of the patient, besides the doctor, what Dr. Ravi Kumar has said about the neurological conditions, which are very obvious. The other condition, like examination, sometimes we see a neurological deficit. What I mean deficit is sometimes there is a tumors formed in the entire spinal cord, what we call spina bifida, or sometimes a meningomyelocele. These are the various conditions what we normally come across where there is no control over the urinary sphincter. Whereas when we examine the patient, whether the bladder is full or empty, if the bladder is empty, I mean, when we examine on the table, the patient has no bladder is not full, then obviously there is a leak all the time. Whereas bladder is full, obviously the patient has got a full bladder, is not able to empty. There is an overflow incontinence, what we call it. Okay. The other issue is we have to examine the vaginal part. We have to see whether there is any descent, utrovesical descent, what we, Dr. Ramakrishna, Dr. Ravi Kumar has just said, there is a prolapse, what we call. We normally see in a multiple pregnancy, lady who had multiple pregnancies, lady who had a pelvic surgeries or a difficult labor in the past. Patient must have had a prolapse or a forceps delivery, or Dr. Lalita is there to explain us about various gynecological issues and other investigations. What you asked me, that ultrasound, simple ultrasound test besides the urine examination to rule out any infections. Ultrasound test will tell us whether there is any stone, which is the cause for frequent urination or incontinence, or any tumors, or any congenital anomalies, what we call congenital anomalies, birth defects. What are birth defects? We see sometimes urinary passage opening at a different level. These are the, children suffering with these conditions definitely needs to be corrected. And there are other tests, simple tests like uroflowmetry. Besides other radiological investigations like CT scan and X-rays were very important. But the uroflowmetry is nothing but a small beaker. Sure. Sensor connected with the patient passes urine, we can see, assess where exactly is the problem. Like, is there a pressure defects? Basically, we know the bladder has got two functions. One is it has to collect the urine. As we are talking now, we all secrete urine. Yes. But we don't perceive it. It's going down into the bladder. But other function is you have to expel the urine whenever there is a proper place to pass urine. So these are the two main functions which we need to investigate, whether there is storage problem, whether the patient is able to store the urine or not. Other is whether there is any difficulty in expulsion of urine. Sure. Many other gadgets are there, which I think other panelists are going to speak. I would like to add some more.
Certainly. So thank you so much for the detailed understanding. We clearly, this problem can originate in many different ways for different people. And this is really something which requires a urologist to understand. If you have incontinence, you do need to get that specialized advice. Yes. Dr. Lalita, you know, from what Dr. Padmakar just said, and what we've done, the research, it is very, it seems very strange that women seem to have twice, that women are twice as more likely to face the problem. Is there any link between, say, pregnancy and, you know, urinary incontinence, and how, and what are the other causes that you know, women seem to be more likely to suffer from this, and then you know, how do you diagnose them? So that's a lot of questions, but yes.
Yeah, definitely. I would say not just 2 times more than in men. 50% of the women over the age of 50 years suffer from urinary incontinence. Almost half of the adult population suffer from urinary incontinence. That's because the woman has a short urethra. That means the outflow resistance is very low from the bladder. The resistance of urine flow is very less as compared to men. So whenever there is pressure in the abdominal wall, there is higher chance of urine leaking if the sphincters are weak. In a normal woman, where the sphincters, that is the muscle tissue, which normally gives control to women, these sphincters are usually placed at the bladder outlet and the urethra. There are different types of sphincters, internal sphincter, external sphincter. These are all actually muscle tissues. And the urethra and bladder also have external support by other ligaments and facial tissues. So there has to be very good muscular as well as facial support. This actually becomes lax. The supports become lax during childbirth. Okay. If there is a prolonged labor, or if there are multiple pregnancies, like, you know, multiparous woman, if a woman had given birth to many children, yes, not one or two, or a difficult delivery, instrumental delivery, like forceps delivery, yeah, induced delivery, or prolonged labor. All these factors, what actually they cause is, they cause weakness of the muscles. The muscles have to stretch out while the baby is coming out in the vaginal delivery. So the muscles, sometimes they fail to regain their original tone. So the lax muscles no longer support the bladder neck and the urethra. So at normal times, these women may be continent, like when the woman is at rest, not working, not exerting herself, there may not be any leak. But during the times of increased intra-abdominal pressure, like coughing, sneezing, laughing, bending, any physical activity which increases the pressure in the abdomen can result in further loss of support to the bladder neck and urethra, and this results in urine leak. And why the incontinence increases with aging? We say it increases with aging, but I would again like to say, support Dr. Ravi's view that we can't consider it as a normal part of aging. Normal change of aging. It is not, it shouldn't be considered, because not every woman has incontinence.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if we just give them the impression, it is many times it's fed into the woman through her family, friends, sometimes even by the family doctors. Okay, it happens with aging, so just forget about it. It's just brushed aside as a trivial issue. Yeah. But let me remind you all, incontinence is not trivial. If it is a severe incontinence, it can affect every sphere of a woman's life. It can devastate a woman's life because it affects quality of life to a great extent.
Yes.
It affects every part of the woman's life, right from social, occupational, recreational, marital, even spiritual life, believe me, is going to get affected if there is severe incontinence. So these women need help. And in our country, many of these women suffer in silence. I would again like to stress the point that these awareness programs are very important to let them know that there is treatment, there is help available.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Lalita. You really highlighted the fact that this can, we trivialize the issue and it actually has a very big impact on our lives. Absolutely. Dr. Lakshman, do you think we need to, as a society, introduce programs for, say, to help, like there are certain exercises which may help, yeah, Dr. Lalita, which should be taught early on to keep the muscles firm. So would you and Dr. Lakshman share your views on, shouldn't we have a far higher outreach on, training in all these things?
I would like to say actually the Kegels or pelvic floor exercises. Yeah, the pelvic floor exercises which are aimed at rebuilding or regaining the tone of the pelvic floor muscles, which when become weak result in distress urinary incontinence. These exercises should be taught to the antenatal woman, the pregnant women, even before the delivery happens, right from their prenatal period. So
Absolutely.
train them to do these exercises, and we don't wait for them to develop incontinence and then teach them. They have to, after every delivery, sometimes even after cesarean, women develop stress incontinence, not just after vaginal delivery. Though the incidence is more after vaginal delivery, even though I see many patients who just had 1 or 2 cesareans still have stress incontinence. So pregnancy itself is a risk factor, we would say.
Yeah.
The connective tissue supports. And all this weakening goes through the menopause. Why actually after menopause the incidence is more? Because the tissue strength in women is to some extent dependent on the estrogen levels. So when the estrogen goes down, the tissues further become weak, which have already become weak at the time of childbirth. The further weakening, further atrophy occurs at the time of menopause. So the issue is compounded. The childbirth and menopause. That is the reason the incidence, again, the risk is more in women. And these exercises should be taught to women right from their young age before they actually have a severe form of incontinence.
Absolutely, absolutely, madam. Dr. Lakshman, I'd like to ask you, like I had just said, that, would you like to share your views on the causes and, what can we as a society do to help this situation, which, has a lot to do with awareness, early intervention, society supporting it also, families supporting it. I can imagine that if there are so many elderly people having this issue, you do need support first from your family. So would you like to share your views on that?
Yeah, very good evening. Already 4 speakers have discussed about various physiological factors which causes incontinence of the urine. And the awareness which we have to create in the society is we can conduct some camps, especially I get a lot of patients from the various old age homes and also elderly. Old age home people, most of them, they are elderly. They don't have a...
Dr. Krishna Prasad, do children also experience incontinence? And is this, like, after all, you train a human being when they're a child to first, understand their muscles, and, your toilet training happens when you are a child. So is there something that we are not doing right from the beginning, which is creating these problems later on in life?
Yeah, that is very important. In the children, there are many causes of incontinence. One is some congenital abnormalities, neurological defects, which can cause incontinence. So we have to rule out meningomyelocele, spina bifida, these things in the children to rule out whenever the children. Another thing is not deciding is one of main causes of incontinence, anatomical abnormality in children. So we have to the children in time in children and because most of the children, they are busy in playing and other things, they neglect. So whenever they rush to the activity. So in that way, they won't completely void the empty the bladder. So that what happens after some time again, they get the feeling of
It's a problem, I think, Ramakrishna Prasad. Can't hear you properly.
Yeah, there is a slide.
So, timely was very important, which the mothers have got a lot of.
Dr. Ravi Kumar, I put the same question across to you because I think it is important to understand children. It's important to understand how children can deal with incontinence. So would you like to share your views on that?
There's audio failure now.
Yeah, Dr. Ramakrishna Prasad was just telling regarding the children who develop this dysfunctional voiding. They are called dysfunctional voiders. These children, they are hyperactive. They play too much. They concentrate on other things to such an extent that they try to hold urine till the last second. Yeah. Then they rush to the bathroom and they don't completely void. They void a small amount. They come back. And these are the children who keep wetting their pants, who keep struggling. And after some time, the situation becomes so bad that even if they want to void properly, their external sphincter does not relax. And these children, they'll not be able to void properly. So they need a lot of training to get back to their routine work. The other thing that we see in children is that there are a lot of congenital diseases like posterior urethral valves or urethral strictures. These are obstructions that are there for the in the urethra, which cause the bladder a lot of high pressure in the bladder. They lead to obstruction of the kidneys, and the kidneys will start to fail if these problems are not diagnosed in the early childhood age. Actually, by the time the child comes to us, if he's 3 or 4 years, we see that already the child has gone into renal failure. So this is...
Sorry, I'm not able to hear anything here.
Yes. Thank you for that.
I'm not able to hear anything.
One point here, Mr.
Sure.
Yeah, what I see in my practice every day is the young girls and adolescents, especially the school-going children, and even sometimes it goes on to working women. What happens? These children, they don't like to use the public toilets, even schools.
Absolutely.
So like the hygiene there. So somehow they train themselves to hold urine till they come back home. So to do that, sometimes they drink less water. Sometimes, they learn to tighten the sphincters, just like Dr. Ravi said just now. So on a long run, it actually becomes a dysfunctional bladder. Like, the bladder function becomes abnormal. Sometimes they have incontinence, sometimes they go into retentions, and on long term, it can have a back pressure effect on the kidneys. So I feel in our country, in girls, it's a social problem which is becoming into a serious medical problem.
Absolutely, Dr. Lalita. I mean, the unavailability of high quality public restrooms, whether it is in schools or outside schools, is absolutely one of the core reasons that women really face. They start training themselves in ways which are not healthy to hold back, their urine, and that can lead to severe problems. Are there different types of incontinence? Dr. Padmakar, are there different types of incontinence, or is there just one type?
I can't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think if the tech team can just connect and check, could we ask the same question to Dr. Lakshman? Dr. Lakshman, would you like to say?
Yeah. There is There are three
I can't hear
major.
anything. I'm sorry.
There are three major variants of incontinence. One is
Yeah.
urgent incontinence.
One second, Dr. Lakshman. Can the tech team please check the doctor's connection? He is not able to hear clearly. Say. Yes, Dr. Lakshman, please say.
Yeah, there are three major variants of incontinence. One is urgent incontinence, where patient cannot hold the urine. Soon he gets the sensation, he has to go to the washroom. Otherwise, urine may leak. That is called urgent incontinence. And second one is stress incontinence, where patient gets urinary leak whenever he increases his intra-abdominal pressures in the form of either cough or strain or any strain or laugh or any etiology leading to the raised intra-abdominal pressures suddenly. And the third one is mixed incontinence. They will have both stress incontinence and also urgent incontinence. And all these people should be evaluated. First, history is very important. And we have to take history related to the medical grounds and also the surgical grounds, whether they undergone any surgeries and all. And ultimately, we have to go for a evaluation. What exactly is the picture, whether it is urgent incontinence contributing significantly or stress or mixed by doing a simple test is called urodynamic study. Then we can come to a conclusion. Basing on that, we can treat them, the patients.
Sure, sure, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Prasad. Hello, madam.
Yes, I'm able to hear you, sir.
Apart from these three incontinence, there is nocturnal urinesis. One is involuntary, the person passes urine unknowingly during sleep in the bed. That is called nocturnal enuresis. It is more prevalent in children and older people. And apart from there is nocturia. Nocturia means frequently the person wakes up in the night and passes urine, which is disturbing the sleep. This is nocturia. Apart from these three, the nocturnal enuresis and nocturia is also prevalent among the in the society.
Certainly. Yes. These are also very important aspects to understand. So, Dr. Ravi Kumar, if we could discuss, how does the disease progress, and can patients track if they are facing rapid deterioration? Are there reasons for rapid deterioration of the body, of the urinary system, which we need to understand better?
Yeah, actually, the disease is present for a number of years and slowly it keeps progressing. The causes for rapid progression are when the disease that he is suffering, like many of the old males, they suffer from prostate enlargement. And when the obstruction to the prostate becomes more and more, these patients will go into develop an overactive bladder and they start leaking. And in the night also, they start passing a lot of urine than in the daytime, and they start suddenly leaking in the bed. They wet their garments in the night. So as I was telling you, early diagnosis and early treatment is a must for all patients of prostatic hypertension, which we see which is a very common disease in aging males, and about 80% of the aging males suffer from some kind of symptoms from the prostate. So even though this disease is very common in the females, a lot of aging male people after the age of 50, they start suffering from enlargement of the prostate and prostate related symptoms. So these people also will come into the same category of leaking urine. So a lot of huge male population is also there, which needs to come to the urologist and get themselves treated, not only for the overactive bladder, but the prostate, which is causing the overactive bladder to come in. The other factor, what we see is many of the diabetic patients, once they lose control over their diabetes and they have high sugars. This excess sugar leads to diabetic neuropathy. They have difficulty in walking. They develop very severe constipation, and they develop a lot of urinary symptoms. These diabetic neuropathy patients also develop weakness of the bladder. We call it detrusor hypotonia. So these patients are not able to void simply because of obstruction, but also because of weakness of the bladder, which they develop because of diabetes. And a lot of other neurological diseases are there, which I was enumerating before, like Parkinsonism and multiple sclerosis. They also cause a lot of disturbance to the bladder. So a good treatment for the neurological diseases, for diabetes, and good treatment for prostate enlargement will help the patients not to get their symptoms out of control.
Yes. Thank you for that detailed answer. So what happens if it is left, if the incontinence is left untreated, Dr. Lakshman? I mean, does it, what have you seen happen in patients who have for a long time not treated their problem?
They have
almost 20 minutes
urine leads to a lot of social stigma. Patient have bedwetting situation. His clothes are always wet with urinary combination. Patient will have a smell, urinary smell. Family people may.
Desktop. I can't hear anything now.
So let's talk about solutions. We've heard a lot about the reasons and the kinds of incontinence and the different issues that people face, whether they are children, whether they are women, whether they are men. So let's talk about the solutions. Can we start with Dr. Lalita? Dr. Lalita, what are the solutions that medical science can offer, whether it's lifestyle or medicine or surgery or anything beyond?
Yeah. So for any medical issue, every doctor would actually, every problem will have a different, a wide range of solutions. So it would range from the least invasive to the most invasive. So as a doctor, we would always like to try the least invasive methods, sometimes even non-medical measures, especially for women with urinary incontinence. Even simple lifestyle changes can bring about a lot of relief. So the lifestyle changes, let's start from the fluid intake, the dietary changes, we call bladder diet. So we have to avoid certain irritating, the bladder irritating dietary factors. And then the other lifestyle changes which I would like to suggest is obesity, though by itself doesn't cause incontinence, but it can aggravate, increases the severity in those who are prone for incontinence. So we always tell these patients to cut down their weight, try to reduce weight. And if a patient is a smoker, definitely quitting smoking would definitely help the patients in getting some relief. So the fluid management is, we don't actually tell them to take less water just because they have to go more number of times. There are some women actually who have obsessive polydipsia. That means they just go on consuming more water. They are into that habit. So for us to know whether how much they are taking, is it increased water intake?
Same problem now, I can't hear anything.
So we have to, simple tool is bladder diet. So we ask the patient, at least for a 24-hour period, we ask the patient to maintain a record of the intake of fluids, all types of fluids, the water, tea, coffee, juices, whatever she takes and what time she takes, and what is the number of times she uses the toilet, each time how much is she passing urine. So we can actually, make a correlation about whether all this is related to a fluid intake, how much fluid cut down can help this patient actually. And coming to the bladder, we tell the patient to reduce the caffeine, tea and coffee, reduce the carbonated drinks, cut down totally actually, and reduce the citrus. The sour foods we tell them to avoid, because they can cause irritation to the bladder muscle and can induce unstable detrusor contractions. That means the bladder, though is not full, will trigger a contraction. The patient will have to actually use the restroom. That will trigger urgency and then incontinence. And spicy foods. Spicy foods, of course, we tell them to reduce. And there's one very interesting concept of microbiome. Many of you might have heard about this microbiome is implicated in every human ailment these days. We have heard of microbiome, vaginal microbiome, even a female urinary microbiome is implicated in some of the cases of overactive bladder. That means normally these women do not have any clinical infection, but when we do some special tests, the bacteria, now the healthy bacteria are lactobacilli, just like in vagina, even in the urinary tract. But after menopause especially, the urobiome, the bacteria in the bladder become more diverse, not just lactobacilli, the anaerobes and other microbes would take over, and that is being implicated as one of the causes of overactive bladder. So this may have future implications. None of us use antibiotics as it for treatment of overactive bladder if there is no clinical infection, but in future that also may have to be looked into, the role of urobiome. So
sure.
These are the non-invasive, non-medical lifestyle changes which would help a woman with overactive bladder. And then the Kegels exercises we've talked about. Yes. Then we have medical management and then surgical management. Sure. So if the lifestyle changes are not helping, then we have to go to the next level.
Sure. Dr. Ravi Kumar, would you like to highlight the surgical aspect of the treatment?
Yeah, actually, the next would be medical management. And if the medical management is not very good, then we'll have to go for surgical management. Surgical management is mainly the last stage. In stress urinary incontinence, which we see in females, we have got good surgeries. We have been doing that for a long time. Initially, we were doing a lot of open surgeries for controlling stress incontinence in females. And now we have minimally invasive tapes. We call them TVT or TOT. These tapes are there. These are all actually daycare surgeries, which have become very popular for stress urinary incontinence. But other than that, for the patients who have got a severe overactive bladder, which is not being controlled by medication, we can always give Botox injections, what the beauticians use for the film actors' faces and all. It has got other uses also, like this Botox is injected into the bladder in a minimal endoscopic surgery, and this gives very good relief to the patient. And ultimately, if the nothing is working, then we'll have to enlarge the capacity of the bladder by doing augmentation, which is a major surgery for the bladder. So surgically, this is other than stress urinary incontinence, where we intervene very early. Rest of the procedures are all done late after all the pharmacological options have been exhausted.
Dr. Krishna Prasad, if you could highlight, sir, in all these solutions, have we been advancing on the drug delivery side in terms of, more efficacy in treatments or more affordable treatments?
Yeah, madam. there are very good drugs are available nowadays. Are you able to hear, madam?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Very good drugs are available nowadays in the treatment of overactive bladder or urgent incontinence. So the anticholinergic drugs, antimuscarinic drugs, beta-3 adrenergic agonists like mirabegron and oxybutynin, and another thing, urispas, fluvoxate. These are the drugs that are useful. In mild cases, we can start with mirabegron, this beta-3 adrenergic agonist, and antimuscarinic drugs like sulfenacin or danfenacin, which do well in mitigating the urgent incontinence. In patients who are not responding to these drugs, we can use a combination of drugs with mirabegron with tolterodine or oxybutynin and these drugs. Most of the drugs are useful and they mitigate the urgent incontinence problem. Whereas in stress incontinence, duloxetine is a drug which is useful, and pelvic floor muscle exercises like Kegel exercises, they are very useful in reducing the grade 1 stress, and we can avoid that minimally invasive surgeries, tape surgeries. Okay, lifestyle modifications and obesity, reduction of the weight, and bladder training and pelvic floor muscle exercises. These are all very important in reducing the stress incontinence in women. And if none of them these work, then as Ravi Kumar said, these minimal invasive surgeries like TOT or TBT or tape surgeries, they're useful in relieving this problem. Whereas another thing is, apart from these drugs, urgent incontinence, the overactive bladder is seen in older people who are having BPH, means benign prostatic hypertrophy. So patients with benign prostatic hypertrophy, they present either with the irritative voiding symptoms or obstructive voiding symptoms or both. So we have to evaluate the patient, what is the cause of the incontinence. Based on the cause, we can treat them. So nowadays, in the pharmacopoeia, many good drugs are available to cure the urgent incontinence.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you for that, Doctor. Dr. Lakshman, if we could understand better, there is a lot of conversation about implants. So how does a patient choose, get advised between surgery and implants and the different formats of intervention?
I can hear you on mobile, not anywhere.
Yeah, there are less role of implants.
She did ask me my name.
Urinary incontinence is concerned.
I can hear from the mobile. She will call my name.
One second. Dr. Divakar, I request you to be on mute, please, when you're talking outside the webinar. Yes. Sorry, Dr. Lakshman. Please tell me.
Yeah. These implants, a few of the implants may be tried for urinary incontinence, especially where the urine is not controlled. Incontinence, especially not failed. All drugs are failed to control the urinary incontinence. And there are different processes available. They will be up the bladder neck and bladder level. The urinary.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Clemens is coming here.
So, Dr. Lalita, I think there is a lot of concern that you are a patient would be taking these medicines at a lot of them would be senior. They would also be taking medicines for many other lifestyle issues, diabetes. So would these medicines have side effects?
Actually, the medicines, antimuscarinics, which we give for control of urgency incontinence, overactive bladder, they have a lot of side effects, especially in elderly population. So we always try to keep the dose at the minimum required to control their symptoms. And there are different formulations which will have different side effects. Many of these drugs cause a dry mouth and constipation. So if the patient is already constipated, we have to actually make sure her constipation is treated, or choose a different drug like the beta-3 adrenergic agonist, The mirabegron is a new entrant into the pharmacological therapy of overactive bladder. So for those who can't tolerate antimuscarinics for a long time, there is a concept called anticholinergic load. So we have to minimize that load because that can have a long-term effects. So we try to avoid giving antimuscarinics and give adrenergic agonists like mirabegron. So these will have less cognitive side effects on the elderly woman. Especially in the elderly population, what we are worried about is the cognitive impairment which can be caused by cognitive impairment means the patient will have the confusion, forgetfulness. So the elderly patient already has some degree of cognitive impairment. If we add on to that problem, there can be sometimes, the serious accidents, especially women with urgency incontinence. They're always in a rush to reach the restroom and they can fall, they can fracture. So actually urgency incontinence I wanted to bring out here is one of the most common causes of falls and fractures in an elderly population.
Sure. I have a general question for everyone. Do you see a lot of research happening in this field in India? Or do you think much more needs to be done? Anybody could start. Dr. Prasad, would you like to say something about that?
Pardon, madam, not able to hear. Hello?
The research that is happening in this field. Dr. Ravi Kumar, would you like to say something?
Regarding the research is going on in the field?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are lots of drugs which are still in the pipeline, and drugs that are available in the world which are yet to come into our market. Because of the newer drug release systems that MSN labs have pioneered, side effects of all these drugs. Many of these drugs which we give to control overactive bladder have got significant side effects like dry mouth, constipation, and visual disturbances. Because of the slow release of these drugs, which has been discovered by our Indian labs itself, the side effects of these drugs have been significantly brought down. The patients are able to tolerate these drugs very well. Many of these drugs also interact with cardiac drugs, and patients who are having glaucoma should be very cautious when they are using these drugs, because there can be a deterioration in their eyesight because of rise in glaucoma. So newer drugs without these side effects, like Dr. Lalita was pointing and Prasad was telling about mirabegron, has got definitely lesser side effects than the older drugs which we were using. May not be more efficacious, but many of the newer drugs that are coming into the market have got lesser effects.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear, and I'm sure it will encourage a lot of people who want help on this front to go and seek it. Now we have an audience which has been very attentive, and a lot of questions have been coming in. I will just take a few of the questions. So one of them is that someone has written that I have a baby boy, 2.5 years old, 2.5 years old, and he has a neurological bladder, grade 5. I won't understand everything that is written here, but I'm sure you will. He has done open vasectomy after 24 days of birth, and it was closed 5 days back. Doctors have suggested GSE to be done. So what advice would you have for a patient like that? Do you have any suggestions and advice if the baby can pass the urine on its own?
Hello.
Yes.
I am Dr. Prasad. Usually vasectomy is done for the child who is diagnosed with having a posturethral valves. posterior walls present with retention of urine. Actually, in the very early age, actually we won't be able to fulgurate the walls by using these endoscopes. So in the first few months of age, we do a vesicostomy for the upper tracts, means the kidneys and the ureters won't be dilated, so that there won't be any renal damage. That's why vesicostomy is done. Once the child grows, by attaining the age of 1 to 1.5 years, we can evaluate the child by doing various investigations like MCUG, RGU, these investigations, mixed routine cystourethrogram, and if the posterior walls is the cause of that retention of urine for which the vesicostomy was done at the time of immediately after birth, then it is a curable condition. We can fulgurate the walls and the child can void normally. She didn't give any diagnosis why the vesicostomy was done immediately after birth. So based on that,
this requires a lot of direct interaction.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you very clearly.
I lost about 30 minutes of connection.
Yes.
Just got it here now.
Certainly, doctor.
See, the question boy, that 2.5-year-old, 2.5-year-old boy with neurogenic bladder, they've already diagnosed this neurological bladder. That means there is some neurological defect is there. So obviously that the way it looks as if this boy has to have intermittent self-catheterization permanently because it's a neurogenic bladder, can't be corrected. Something to do with the meningomyelocele surgery. Myelocele surgery, that is a spinal cord defect. If there is spinal cord defect, unfortunately, they can't do anything except putting a permanent urinary drainage from the ureters, what we call. That can be given to this boy so that this boy can grow normally and continue his, he has to have a bag attached to his side of his tummy. Okay, so that can be offered to this boy. That's what I look like, what Ravi Kumar and Lalita says. Let's see.
Certainly. There is another question, sir, and all these are very, very specific questions. So I'm just going to read out and I'm sure you will understand better. So my mother, age 44 years, is suffering from obstructive LTS, and when checked up on with doctors, they suggested BMC urethroplasty. My ask here is, will this be helpful for her permanently, or this be cured, or can this be cured by like through homeopathy, some other alternative systems?
I think we must ascertain the cause for lower urinary tract symptoms, LUTS, amongst a woman, which is very common, but BMG, that is buccal mucosal graft for a woman, is not a very common procedure to be done. What we normally see, what is the cause for urinary obstruction, the urethral obstruction. It can be dealt with, if it can be dealt with urethral drainage, I mean dilatation, easily. I think lady of 44, she can do it herself. I think Dr. Lalita has a lot of experience about it. Probably, I think we can, BMG, that is buccal mucosal graft, urethroplasty for this lady probably would cause urinary incontinence. What Dr. Lalita says?
Yeah. Urethral dilatation is one of the options, but if the patient is requiring too frequent dilatations and if there is evidence of a stricture on investigation, we offer BMG urethroplasty even for women. The risk of incontinence is very less. It's actually, upcoming the procedure in women of late.
Okay.
Very few actually procedures being offered to women. This is usually done. This procedure is usually done in men with urethral stricture, but for women, it is being offered off late with good results.
Yeah. In women now, BMG urethroplasty, dorsal onlay urethroplasty is being offered off late, and many cases are being done. The results are good. The short-term results are good. We don't know the long-term results, but it is a good alternative to dilatation. Patients who are frequently undergoing dilatation. BMG urethroplasty off late is a procedure being done for urethral stenosis in female. The short-term results are good, madam.
Deepal, this lady is only 24-year-old, so it is very unlikely that she
44 she said.
44.
Yeah.
44.
She has to be thoroughly evaluated for other kinds of bladder dysfunction before diagnosis of urethral stenosis is made.
Yeah.
She needs
no, and I see, you see the problem now that is that patients would have questions like, what is the toss-up between surgery and alternative medicine? And I think these are the questions which most people will have who have, who are suffering from it, because there is always, that doubt in their mind, should I go in for surgery?
The dictum is, no patient should undergo invasive irreversible treatment until the cause of incontinence has to be ascertained. Unless we demonstrate that, we should not offer the surgery. Surgery is the last choice.
Certainly.
The patient is different. Actually, we can't generalize the treatment options for a patient.
Yeah, absolutely.
The patient requires a thorough evaluation before we can say that this is good for you, then this is not good for you.
Yeah. Dr. Lakshman, there are a lot of questions which have come on asking about whether, say, yoga, pranayama, and all the alternative systems that we have in India can be of use in all these different problems that are arising in the urinary system.
Very less. The well described exercise or practice is only Kegel's exercise, where we can make pelvic floor muscles strengthened, especially postpartum, that is the delivered females and stress incontinence patients who undergone surgery for various reasons. And that is the only well-described procedure we can offer to these patients, the form of Kegel exercise. But urgency incontinence and other things, I don't think any method is useful. If psychologically they are feeling they wanted to go every time urination, that is a psychological feeling they get. They practice meditation, getting their brain into control, and they practice meditation so that they can forget their thoughts of going frequent urination. But so far, Kegel's exercise is the only one which is much helpful for the practice.
Okay.
Depression is one of the causes of urgent incontinence. Urgent incontinence is more common in patients who are depressed. So meditation, yoga, these may help in relieving the mental depression and other things. In that way, that can help.
But it is interrelated. Women with severe incontinence can go into depression. It's not the depression which is causing incontinence. It's both ways, vice versa. So
both ways. Yes, both ways.
Definitely, yoga, meditation have a role in the general well-being of every human being.
Yeah.
See, nowadays we see a lot of young patients coming who have a lot of stress because of their work.
Yeah.
They have a lot of frequency when they are working, but very clearly we can make out that once they go to sleep, they don't get up. So clearly it is stress related. So these kind of patients will be relieved very much by doing yoga, by doing pranayam and meditation. More than these things, meditation will help them to relax their minds, and that will indirectly act on the bladder to relax the bladder.
I think these are very important tips. And
obesity control is another thing. Obesity control is another thing which we need to stress on.
Besides this, I think we need to have a control over smoking, alcohol ingestion,
yes,
and spicy diet, and various drugs which they are indulging in. I think it has to be stopped. That is very important. Nobody describes about all this, but we have to really look into their habits, especially cigarette smoking, alcohol consumption, as well as various pan, gutkhas. All these are bladder stimulants. They really stimulate the bladder. So some people are habituated drinking plenty of water because of water therapy or some kind of a therapy. Obviously, if they drink 4 or 5 liters of water, they have to go frequently, isn't it? So they have to stop this habit unnecessary of drinking excess water.
Actually, that leads me to the next question. Ranjan Rao is a college student. You want to say something, Dr. Lalita? Okay.
With the COVID era, we have to remember one more thing. You know, a lot of kada is being consumed, green teas and spicy drinks and kada.
Yes.
So this has to be avoided, especially if the patient has noticed the recent onset symptoms like increased frequency and urgency. These are implicated as one of the causative factors in the bladder symptoms. Yeah.
No, in fact, Dr. Lalita, we have a question from Ranjan Rao, who's a student, who said, I've heard that a bladder diary helps in understanding one's natural urine flow through the day. Does urine flow tend to be consistent day after day in a human being? And is there any amount of water the doctors can suggest that one should ideally take in a day? What is
ideally 2.5 liters of water intake is more than enough, madam. 2.5 liters of water intake per day is enough, and we have to take water in spacing intervals, not at a time. Not some people take 1 liter of water at a time. Immediately after getting up from bed, some people say that I drink, sir, around 1 liter of water immediately after getting off to wash my bowels and others. That is not indicated. That is not required, and that should not be done. Actually, we have to take water at spacing intervals. Every 2 to 3 hours, we take 1 glass of water. Like that, the total daily intake should be not more than 2.5 liters. Another habit people will be having is immediately after passing urine, they go and drink water again. So this goes to vicious circle of drinking water, and individuals have got the habit of drinking 1 to 1.5 liter of water before going to bed. That also should be avoided. So if they take a lot of water before going to bed, so they have to naturally they have to get up in the night 1 or 2 times to empty their bladder during sleep. That will disturb the sleep. So better to avoid drinking water after taking dinner, because after 7 or 8 p.m. better not to take water. So daily 2.5 liters of intake in toto. It includes water and other liquid diet. Is enough. Not more than 2.5 liters is required routinely. Only another 500 ml may be required in hot summer.
Okay. And would somebody like to talk about the bladder diary? I mean, does that help? Does it help track?
Yeah, madam. The frequency bladder diary.
Yeah, I was actually
bladder diary. Go on.
Yes, sir.
Bladder diary, because that the person has asked one specific question. It is not consistent day every day. So we usually ask for a 3-day diary. So if it is not feasible, then we compromise and ask them to get it correct, because the patients usually don't have that much. We need to record for 3 days. So, and another thing, especially the fluid is mainly nocturia. That means that many times in the night, we ask them to cut down the fluid intake in the evening. Coffee or even water, mixed water after 6, especially if the patient is bothered by nocturia. Otherwise, we don't need really.
Yes. So, Dr. Lakshman, I have a question for you. So, the viewer is asking, see, actually, I'm in a conundrum. I drink less water out of fear that I will need to urinate. So when I'm going outside, 1 hour before I stop drinking water. And now that has become a habit, but this is dehydrating my body. And I feel helpless about the situation. So what should I do? So Subhadra Ramireddy is asking how to resolve this conundrum.
Just she requires only lifestyle modification. Whatever she has the problem, she has to modify accordingly her condition. We don't know where the privacy conditions when she goes outside, and her thirsty levels and her requirement of the water. So she requires basically a lifestyle modification according to her comfort and convenience. So if she has to carry 1 bottle, and whenever she feels thirsty, she can drink water, and soon she comes to the home, she can take more water in the house. If it is not possible to take more water outside, let her carry 1 bottle, and wherever she gets privacy, she can drink more water outside. Otherwise, she can, after coming home, she can take plenty of water to compensate. Except for
Okay, thank you. Actually, we've run out of time. We have more questions, but I will send it to you on mail. I would like to, wrap up this session by asking all of you, very seasoned and experienced doctors, how can awareness about all these very important things that you shared with us today, how can awareness be improved? And, how can we help people find their path to resolution and cure better? So all of you could answer one after the other. How do you think all of us as a society can help to improve, the stigma, the low levels of awareness, and all these other aspects that we talked about today in people?
First thing is what I feel, it is a disease. Like any other disease, it has to be treated. One has to realize that first. It is not okay even for our grandmothers to have a incontinence of urine. No.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
It's not okay. Then tell them that this can be curable. If not curable, 100% definitely it can be manageable. Manageable to the extent that where these elderly people, they can go out and get her a social life properly, in normal sense.
Yes.
Then there are plenty of good drugs available these days. But all these drugs interfere, some of them at least, with their cardiac medications. So you have to be careful under the supervision of doctors. And very rarely, surgical aspect has to be looked into whenever it is there.
Required. Yes.
Especially stress urinary incontinence people.
Absolutely.
Lady, those still in job, to look after the house or a job, she can't have a urinary leak everywhere. It's so embarrassment for her. So she has to have a surgical option, and very good surgical procedures available for extreme stress urinary incontinence. We have to offer them the surgery. Surgery is safe, and we can do it, and they're very minor surgeries, what we call, and there is no major surgery involved. Endoscopically, we can correct these problems. Dr. Lalita would like to add some more about these conditions. Yeah.
As about the awareness, I feel it's a collective responsibility of all of us, right from the primary care physicians, the gynecologists, and the urologists. Actually, we also need to bring about awareness even among the physicians themselves. Many times, the incontinence is just brushed aside as a trivial problem, as I said in the beginning of the presentation.
Yes.
So we have to actually counsel these women that incontinence is like any other medical problem. If you seek medical advice, there is a solution, and the solution is not always surgery. There are so many other options: lifestyle changes, medical therapy, and a very minimally invasive surgical treatment. Actually, I would like to add one more, the recent development here, the energy-based devices like fractional CO2 lasers, like, facial lasers, you people have heard. So similarly, these lasers have been used to re-strengthen the tissues of the connective tissue supports of the bladder neck and urethra. So it is useful for women with mild stress urinary incontinence when they don't want a surgical correction and when they are not responding to exercises. So they don't get well with exercises, they don't want surgery, and for mild symptoms, even we don't want to operate. So for such patients, these energy-based devices like laser is a boon. I've used it in my own patients where the symptoms are mild and with great results.
Hello.
Yes.
We have to bring awareness of this problem in the society, madam. It is the responsibility of both the doctors as well as the media. We have to conduct many webinars, seminars, and issuing pamphlets and other things so that people will come out and they consult the doctors and they get the treatment. There is a stigma in the society that incontinence, they won't discuss among themselves, and they won't go to the medical, to the doctors for the problem. So we have to get the awareness in the society, so that by doing these webinars and as I discussed, seminars and issuing advertisements in the actually in the papers, newspapers, in the TV channels, and distributing pamphlets.
I'll show you one small
hand. We can.
I can show you some handbill, something like this. We can easily treat. We can have a questionnaire there. We can easily have a patient one-to-one personal treatment with them.
So we have to get the confidence. We have to infuse confidence into the public that incontinence is not a major problem. It can be easily cured, and so many advances have been done in the treatment. So that we can if you bring the awareness, so that we can mitigate this problem.
Certainly.
The patients we see are just the tip of the iceberg, because it's reported that only less than 10% of the women who suffer from incontinence report to the doctor. So that shows how many more are suffering in silence.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, as I was telling you before, it is just like that. Patient should not, the patients and the older population should not feel that this is a aging process and they should sit at home. They have to come out, and it is for the media and for the doctors and for all the health workers, the Anganwadi workers and the gynecologists, where most patients go initially. All these people together, we can bring out this social problem, and we can correct them, so that a lot of psychological disturbance of the patients can be corrected.
Certainly. Dr. Lakshman, your final words?
Yeah. It is a collective responsibility, madam. As Lalita madam said, it is a collective responsibility of the, not only just doctors community, it is the responsibility of the print media, digital media, even the political side, or wherever there is a possibility, we have to create more awareness in the society. We should involve more people like you from Times of India, and other people also should come forward to bring such programs, webinars or seminars or whatever, so that people will think that it's not a social stigma. We can take out the stigma from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, doctors. It has been an extremely enlightening session. I hope to have more such conversations to help millions of people face all these different issues that come up in life and get the proper medical advice so that they can live well. And as Dr. Padmakar said, absolutely it's unfair for even a grandmother to have to face this without any medical help. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to MSN for arranging such a wonderful, and thanks to, thank you so much.
Thank you, Times of India. Thank you, MSN company, for conducting the program. Thank you.
Yes, this program is being conducted, supported by MSN Labs. So, and this is the Times of India initiative.